It is still January, so all the January releases, you gotta be cautious walking in because usually they're really bad. And I never saw a commercial, I never saw a trailer for this movie. I had no idea what the actual plot of this movie was going in. And it's still January, so I was pretty, nervous.
Here's Johnny.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Expecto Patronum!
I.S.S. stars Ariana DeBose and follows tensions flare in the near future aboard the International Space Station as a conflict breaks out on Earth, revealing the U.S. and Russian astronauts receive orders from the ground to take control of the station by any means necessary. Now listen, I'm a movie guy. I know a lot about movies, and especially movies coming up that usually people don't even hear about. The thing is, with this movie, I really just did not hear about this movie. Now, I did see that it premiered at a festival last year and is obviously releasing this weekend, and there was no word about it on Twitter, and so I went in blind. I didn't even bother looking up a trailer because I was like, you know what? Shock me, movie. And I can say this, it's not January bad, but it's still not a great movie because I think the biggest thing with this movie is this could have been a really hidden gem, 10 Cloverfield Lane good kind of movie. It has the same type of scenario in a way, but this movie, in my opinion, the script and the directing and the overall pace does not help it. Beginning with the positives is the performances by most people. I think everyone does a good job. Seriously, the guy from Game of Thrones, he plays one of the Russian people. He's good in this movie. I liked him a lot. I like the dynamic of his character because he's definitely a character you're like, oh, he's from Game of Thrones. He's going to be like a big buff guy. Not really, and I really like that by his performance. The one guy from Devil, he's the officer in Devil. He's really good in the movie. He's not in the movie as much as I want him to be in, but when he is in the movie, he is very good. And then John Gallagher Jr., he was actually in 10 Cloverfield Lane. Shocker. His performance is good. I just didn't really like what they did with his character at all. Now, when it comes to Ariana DeBose, I think she's fine in this role, but there's a few scenes she wasn't giving much to her emotion. There's one scene in particular where she's doing something, holding something very tight, and she's giving no emotion, and I don't know if that wasn't to do with the direction or her, but not her best work, in my opinion, just honestly. And overall, I think the scenario is a really intriguing idea. 3 Russian people, 3 Americans in space on a space station get told, take the others out. And they obviously work together, they build relationships, that human connection, and that can truly cause inner human just humane, just like thinking about killing someone that you fell in love with, a good friend, and then they have to say, we follow our duty. That idea is so cool. I love that idea. Besides that, this movie is just, honestly, it's boring, really. And it's sad because I think the director of this movie had the concept, but 10 Cloverfield Lane is a movie that I'm going to keep using an example of because they're in a tight spot and it's 3 characters who just don't know if they can trust one another, and that movie is enthralling. You are in it to win it, and this movie's set in space. I feel like this movie should be 10 times better. Now, looking at this movie, it's not a big budget movie. There's not obviously a lot of eyes on this movie. So maybe the budget wasn't there to do that kind of stuff. And honestly, when it comes to the CGI, it's not bad, but you can notice it's CGI. There are some shots I'm like, yeah, that's definitely CGI, especially when it comes to their wiring on these actors floating around. I understand they have wires on them, but for every space movie I've ever seen in my whole life, this is the only movie I could tell you, yeah, I can tell they're wearing wires, which is obviously not a good thing. And there's also one mistake in this movie, and it's a minor spoiler. There's a person that gets, stabbed in the side by a drill, and you see it in this person's side, and when this person turns and the camera's on them, they don't see the blood or anything. I'm like, didn't you just stab that person? Did the movie forget that in a matter of seconds? And that's where I go to the director. I just don't think the director was the right person for this movie. Now, I don't really recognize this director from their work. There's one movie I recognize, I just haven't seen it in a long time. But the thing is, I just don't think the camera work was really creative in this movie at all. It felt very boring and paced. Like, it just felt generic. And throughout for a 95-minute movie, it just kind of dragged for me. And really, when there's all these characters are running around in space and there's all just these inner tension, there's no good character work there that really you can build between these performances. Like, there's good acting or there's good enough, but there's not good character work where you really care about it. Because, like, imagine you love your best friend, you have to hurt them because they follow a different society. That could be really good, especially in space. Like, that is such a winning, like, movie, if you ask me. And it's 95 minutes, so, like, this should all be just perfect. And I don't think it is at all. I think it's boring. I think it's forgettable. And the ending, I'll say this, I wasn't disappointed in the ending, but it definitely sat there and made me thinking, like, were you trying to do something more epic or more just some, like, calming? But to me, bad script, not great directing, not good characters. I'm going to give I.S.S. a C minus. Like I said, it's not a great movie, but it's not January bad, but I can see why it got released in January. I feel like this movie could have maybe a little bit of a following in a few months or a year, something like this little hidden gem kind of movie, maybe. Because I always like sci-fi kind of stuff, but this movie just, it felt like it had the ingredients, but the directing and the writing wasn't really there. That would have really amped this movie, 100% in my opinion. And if you guys enjoy this movie review, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everybody.